and I will call to order this meeting of the Planning Commission. Madam Clerk, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Brewer,
Here.
Commissioner Robinson,
Present.
Commissioner Abraham,
Present.
Commissioner Clark,
Present.
Commissioner Nordmo,
Present.
Chair Hillman,
Present.
Commissioner Hammond.
We did receive notice from Commissioner Hammond that he would not be available this evening, so I'll take a motion to approve the absence of Commissioner Hammond.
So moved.
Support.
The motion to approve the absence of Commissioner Hammond has been made and supported. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Very good. We'll approve Commissioner Hammond's absence. If you are willing and able to, please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are all the planning commissioners in possession of today's agenda? Okay, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda, please.
I make a motion to amend the agenda
Thank you.
to include the topics not on the agenda as they pertain to the master plan or other topics
For public comment.
for public comment. Sorry.
Okay, so we have a motion to amend the agenda to allow for agenda item 6, public comment, to include public comment that goes beyond items on the agenda. Can I have a second, please?
Support.
All right, the motion to amend the agenda to allow for public comment, section number 6, to be on any topic, not just those listed on the agenda, has been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, the agenda is approved and amended. Ordinarily, I would seek a motion to approve our April meeting minutes. However, we didn't have enough notice in advance of this meeting to properly review them. So I'll take a motion to table our approval of April's meeting minutes until our June meeting, when we have had enough advance time to do such. So I'll get a motion to table, please.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion that's been seconded to table the approval of our April meeting minutes until June. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, we'll table the approval of our April meeting minutes until June. Moving along, number 6, public comment. As Commissioner, Robinson motioned, this opportunity for public comment will go beyond just meetings on the agenda. You'll have 3 minutes, should you choose to express your public comment on any topic.
One thing real quick,
Sorry,
even
John,
more than in the other room.
Would you mind stating?
I'm John
Thanks.
Suzanis, Lathrup Village resident, Rainbow Drive. Even more than the other room, it's very hard to hear you. So I think even above your microphones, you might have to yell at us a little bit. That fan's very loud, so I just wanted to make that comment before the meeting gets underway. And just on the topic of economic development that you guys were talking about there, to me, the most important thing that happened was the 10 to 15 minutes that you guys were conversing and talking about ideas, and there's a little bit from the public, but I'm really looking forward to when you guys have that time and that structure to suss out those kinds of ideas, because I heard some really interesting things there. One question I always have wanted to ask either this commission or just try to understand if I'm right about the understanding, is that a lot of the weird office buildings that are half above ground and half under, my understanding is that was a workaround for property owners because there was a height limit on buildings, and so they couldn't build a 2-story building, so they bought these horrible things, in my opinion, horrible things. And the biggest part that I don't understand, that you can't adapt them to any kind of meaningful retail use. So I'm just wondering if possibly considering existing height requirements for buildings, allowing it to go to an actual 2 stories might give some of these property owners an incentive to build something more useful and maybe bulldoze some of those, but that's my thought on that. And then just ahead of your consideration of Parks and Rec, I just think this is super important. As a council member, I'm looking forward to the day that we can look at the budget for Parks and Rec and start to build a path towards having an actual Parks and Rec director again. But in the meantime, it falls to these bodies to sort of take conservatorship and guardianship and make sure that we don't lose more park going forward. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, seeing none, we'll move along. By the way, we've got a pretty light agenda this evening, so this will be the bulk of it. Agenda item 7, new business A, master plan update, Parks and Recreation discussion. We have a few representatives here from Giffords-Webster. I don't know if I'm turning this over to them or to the two of you.
Yeah, it'll be handed over to Hannah. She'll be coming up and
Okay.
joining us.
Before I leave, I know I turned up the AC, but if it is really loud and if it is a problem, I can turn it down. So if we're okay with that, it is going to get hot in here very fast if I do that, though. So
Yeah, I feel the difference in the cool air once you turned it up. So I'll use my big girl voice and talk and
Okay.
keep it going. It's my vote.
okay,
Thanks, Tom.
no problem.
All right. Mr. Colson, would you care to kick us off, please?
Yes. So, okay. We're going to welcome Jill up. And tonight we've been going through economic development. Great job. It was a wonderful conversation, especially at the end there. I think we were really getting down to some nitty-gritty things. And we're going to move on to our final topic on the master plan update, which is Parks and Recreation.
Thank you. Jill Bain with Giffords-Webster, city's planning consultant. I wanted to, before Hannah gets the seat and starts going through her slides, talk about just the premise of why Parks and Recreation here with the Planning Commission. The Parks and Recreation Committee has, for several years, put together their action plan. The plan is required by the state of Michigan, the DNR, for funding, grant funding. So we like to have a current plan that's updated every 5 years. That's due to be completed and submitted to the DNR by February 1st of each year. So this process will lead towards that plan being submitted by February 1st of 2027 to be then good for the next 5 years. The reason this was part of the process 5 years ago, and the reason that it's included, some communities do them completely separately. The reason we include it is because you are a small community, but I think it's a really interesting way to tie everything together. So you've been talking about housing, you've talked about transportation, you've talked about economic development. Now we're talking about parks, but we're also thinking a little bit bigger too about sustainability and resiliency. So the Planning Commission, we thought, could tie in some of those ideas together in this recreation plan. Parks and Rec Committee was invited, so hopefully maybe some of them will be able to come, but we'll still be presenting all of this and working with them on the actual action plan itself. But for the Planning Commission, ideas of how to connect all of these things together in the fabric of the community.
Could I ask a high-level question?
Certainly.
So I know that in the master plan update that a previous iteration of this commission completed in 2020, 2021, there is a portion of that document dedicated to things like parks and recreation. But then there is a separate document wholly dedicated to parks and recreation,
Right.
authored by your group, but also advisory Parks and Recreation Committee, which I'm not sure if that is the same or a different type of body than the men and women that serve on our Parks and Rec Committee itself. But anyway, my general question is, from a Parks and Rec perspective, what will the final documents look like this
Yes.
time around? Will there be a standalone document dedicated to the topic and then
Yes.
it like a featurette in the
Yes,
grander
exactly.
master plan document?
Exactly.
Okay.
Because the DNR they
Care
don't need
about the
all
other
the rest
stuff,
of the
sure.
stuff. So we just give them what they need, which has a very specific organizational structure. There are certain requirements they want to see those boxes checked, so we do all that. So I think from the perspective of, is more background of Parks and Rec, the last plan and the 2015 plan were both very much from the perspective of we have limited resources, what can we do with what we have? We won't be adding more parks, but I think that's still the case, but we should be including in there things that could be longer term strategies, and maybe there are things that we can do from a funding perspective in the rec plan that we can, that could be an action item. Research funding structures or funding mechanisms to support ongoing activities of the recreation department. Hire a manager. What do we have to do that? That may not be able to be done in the next 5 years, but I think writing that in and then having it there to say like, hey, in 2031, when we do this again, what were we talking about 5 years ago? And what of those good ideas are still good and we can pull forward to today?
Sure.
Does that help?
Yeah, it does help. Thank you.
Okay. Any other?
I was slightly concerned that the city was producing two documents
No.
independent of each other, but
Yeah,
it
no.
sounds like they're very much born from the same process.
Right. I think I would like to have you think about how the city's parks and the recreation, to some extent the programming, I mean, that's really not your wheelhouse, but how does that support the community? How does that support our neighborhoods? We talked about in the last plan how in the southeast quadrant there are no parks. So there were some ideas about how something could be created. Are there, I think this would take obviously residents from that neighborhood to really champion that, but could we do things like close the streets for every Sunday in the summer and activate that in some way? Those are the kinds of things to make sure that everyone in the city, regardless of where they are, what neighborhood, feels like they're connected. And then talking about connections, how do we make sure that people can get to the parks from where they are safely? How does the park, improve and enhance neighborhood property values, and what kind of a relationship does that have on the business corridor itself? So kind of bigger picture, higher level questions.
And you say it repeatedly, and I love it when you say that it's a fabric and it's all
Yeah.
connected. You can make an argument for every topic we've gone through. It's
Exactly.
housing, transportation, and now we're on to parks and recreation. And part of the reason we're doing parks and recreation is because DNR requires it,
Mm-hmm.
but also for a master plan, it's an aspect to it. And then when you have a parks plan and you have a master plan, that's when you get a comprehensive plan. And it's more in-depth, more connected, and also it gives more opportunity for residents to provide feedback in components that they may not otherwise be able to. So having parks be involved, our parks committee, people can go to the Parks and Recreation Committee and provide feedback. And I know they also have some other opportunities
Mm-hmm.
and strategies for reaching out to residents.
Right. And that's also why we split up the surveys between the 4 different topics, because again, some people are more interested in one topic than another topic, but you as a planning commission get to see how all of those things are connected. And we don't, as we've said, we don't think about each one of those elements just in isolation. It's always within the context of other things.
And that should come to almost any policy decision that you guys make, is using the comprehensive and master plan as a guide so that you can look at every component and how it could play into it, and also bring up aspects you may not otherwise think about when it comes to going to parks. Like you said, transportation. It's more than just cars and buses. It's also walkability. It's also routes, safe routes to school. There's many aspects to it. So when you come and make these policy decisions, look at it from who does it help, who does it hurt, and when it comes to all of these mosaic aspects of the master plan, what aspect does it help and which aspect does it hurt? So that's what you should be thinking when we come to actual zoning ordinance changes that are actual policy.
And the last thing I'll say, well, one thing, when you said walking and bicycling, it reminded me we had a planning commissioner probably 12 years ago, maybe, who also wanted to have rollerblading in there.
Oh,
So
okay.
he was a rollerblader, and he wanted to make sure that the
That's a
roads
good
were
deal.
safe for that. One of the other things to think about with Parks and Recreation is sustainability. I mentioned that. So thinking about tree canopy cover, where we can be increasing trees. There is an effort to, on the Parks Committee, I think, to be working on more trees. And then thinking about that with the parks, but also within the neighborhoods and any of our other public spaces that we have available that we can add to that. So kind of those things together.
May I ask one more kind of fundamental question before we proceed with the presentation? I know all 4 of the people on our Parks and Rec committee, and I can confirm none of them are here. Well, our liaison is here, but the committee members are not. Sorry, that was our mayor giving me a hard time from the
Okay.
audience. Anyway, it's a question about the role of the planning commission versus this other committee that is incredibly pertinent to this
Yes.
topic. We may discuss tonight things that members of the of the Parks and Recreation Committee have polar opposite positions on.
We'll
And
reconcile that with you all.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm curious what ultimately serves as the authorship of this portion of the master plan.
That's a very good
Like,
question.
and of course, our input and community input and all of that is valuable, but part of me feels like dominant to the contribution of this portion of the
Right.
master plan should be the input of those who are actively working in Parks and Recreation day in and day out. So if you could
Correct.
speak a little bit to.
Yes, we did start with one meeting with the rec committee 2 months ago or 3 months ago. We will go back to them. They're the advisory committee to city council who ultimately will approve the recreation plan. So to the extent that there are things in the master plan, I'm hard pressed to think that you will come up with something that will be 180 degrees away from what the Parks and Rec Committee thinks about things. You're more big picture, their next 5 years, what are we doing? So to that extent, I think you'll be very complimentary. If we come up to some point though where we're like, oh, we've got these 2 diverging thoughts, I think we will just discuss that with you and with the rec committee and with council, so if we need to. But ultimately, council will be the body to approve the recreation plan component for submission to the DNR.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm gonna let Hannah come up and she's gonna begin the presentation.
Hi, Derek.
Yes. Oh,
Or- Hi, can everyone hear me? I know that fan is going in the back, so some of these topics that have been discussed, you're gonna see it up here on the slides, so I might, go over it in brief, but if we have more questions, please let me know. A lot of this stuff is complementary to each other, so if you feel like, you might want to get more information or save your questions to the end, you can do that as well. But we just wanted to start with some more housekeeping business. This is going back last month. Many people expressed wanting a little bit more clarification, not just on where we are in the engagement timeline, but what does this overall timeline actually look at? So I just wanted to stop and take a moment to talk about that, because we started back in October of last year in the visioning phase. That was just kicking off the project, meeting with City Council and the Planning Commission. We had that joint meeting, and then we moved into just introducing this process and forming what that engagement plan would look like, right? That kind of took us up through January. Right now, we are in this workshops and data collection phase, engagement phase, whatever you might call it. And we've been through housing, transportation, economic development, and we're right on the end here at Parks and Recreation. And really, we're going to be moving next into this goals and objectives phase. And what that's going to look like, you're going to see preliminarily plan drafting. We would like, if the Planning Commission would even like to write out their own versions of how they think the goals or the objectives should be written, we welcome all feedback to that effect. And then we're gonna have the summer open house event, which in the last meeting, we were tentatively planning for July. And that'll be really truly the wrap up of the engagement. You know, we'll have time to go through and review all that data, and it'll be on display for the public to interact with again in the summer. So that plan drafting phase, that'll be ongoing. It'll be a very back and forth process between you guys and us and the public comment. And that'll take us all the way really through fall and into early next year when we hope to have that plan adoption. So once we have a plan that we all like and we can all agree on, everybody's input has been heard. Well, and I'll stop and say, I know it's hard to please everybody with such a comprehensive document, but when we feel that everyone's voices are heard in it, we will move towards public notice, and then there'll be a final hearing and adoption. Thanks. Does anybody have any questions about that overall process? Did that help clarify some of the earlier questions that we had from last time?
It did, and I appreciate, and I think I speak for more than just myself, that your clarification on the goals, objectives, purpose of the summer open house that you provided at our May meeting, I'm sorry, this is our May meeting, our April meeting, was really helpful for us to kind of wrap our head around that better. So I feel a lot more on track in my own mind today than I did then, so thank you.
Great, that's glad, I'm glad it helped, and please again, like if you have any more questions about the process, we're always open to answering questions. So that being said, this is our overall process. Again, we're kind of near the end of that workshops and data collection phase, and back to this timeline that you guys have seen every month. We are at the end of the engagement phase. We're on Parks and Recreation, and then the only thing really left tying this portion together is the open house event. And then we just wanted to update you guys on how the surveys are going. We do have lawn signs out now promoting the surveys. They're in most of the parks, along the pathways. If you've seen them outside, I know that was, I remember it was a suggestion of one of the commissioners, so we did move on that and produce some lawn signs. That was a great idea. Your housing survey has 225 responses. Then following that, transportation has 73. Economic development, we're seeing 53 responses. In Parks and Recreation, we're seeing 49 responses. And I will reiterate, I usually have to update this a few times ahead of the meeting. Those are constantly trickling up in numbers. So, but keep telling your neighbors, passing out the business cards, directing people to the website. Those surveys will be open until May 31, the end of this month. So there's still time left to get additional input. But I think right now we're looking pretty good. Yes.
A few things on this topic, and please, commissioners, if there's anything you'd like to add, jump in. You mentioned that you're having to constantly update this because the numbers are as dynamic as they are. Are you finding that all 4 of the surveys are continuing to receive new inputs, or it's like the most recent one is the most popular one, or how is that going?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd say overall, the housing survey has been slowing a little bit, but it does have the most numbers. So part of that, I would speculate, like most people who wanted to respond have seen it, but obviously could still be people out there that haven't. So I encourage everyone to keep moving on that. Economic development is overall probably the slowest response rate. As far as how long it's been open to how many responses we've got per day, I think that's maybe a topic that people don't click on first. You know, I think housing and Parks and Rec are definitely the most popular surveys for how many days they've been open.
Any other feedback or questions?
Yeah.
So you mentioned the surveys close at the end of May?
Yes,
Is that
May
correct?
31st at 11:59 p.m. they'll close.
And then the plan is to have an open house that showcases those results, but also invites public participation in July?
Yes. So you guys will have all of the data sets as soon as we get them published and posted. So you'll have time between May 31st and the meeting in June to review those things, and they will be posted online. as well, so they'll be fully transparent to the public. And then the open house will serve as a way to, you know, if anybody feels like, oh, maybe I didn't think about this, or I wanted to give additional feedback, but it'll really be more geared towards what's the feedback on the next steps, you know, what are we going to look at in terms of goals, but it will also serve as an opportunity for people to get final input, yes.
Who is advertising that? Is that you guys, or do we have to design the, like, how does that get publicized?
Yeah, so we just settled on the date, so.
Okay.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
just
you wanna
settled on the date
Speak to that.
yesterday,
Mhm.
and we reserved the room, so we are set for 4:30 to 6:30 on July 21st, which is just prior to our July meeting, and we're getting promotional material together so we can get the word out. But please spread the word, and then also all other boards and committees, please also notify your members and also spread the word during your meetings.
So you're producing the promotional materials?
Yes.
Okay,
yeah,
got
we'll
it.
be getting it out as soon as possible.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know, thanks.
Absolutely. Any more questions before we move into the Parks and Rec stuff? Yeah, and this is just sort of what we talked about here. The next steps really are surveys close. At the June meeting, PC will review the data, talk about the future land use map, goals and objectives, the open house, and then just a description of what that open house event will be to your question. If there's no more questions on that before we move into Parks and Rec.
I would like to add, I know that the idea for lawn signs may have been born from this dais, but it's my understanding that our newly formed communications committee also had its hand in the kind of manifestation of those signs. So I'd like to extend my appreciation to them for their contributions to that effort.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. So, moving into, well, what is a Parks and Rec plan and why is it relevant to this process? I know that Jill spoke to that, but I'm going to pass it off to Eric to just talk a little bit more about that, kind of talk a little bit more about the parks in the city and what are the existing conditions right now.
So I had the pleasure of visiting some of the parks last week, and so Sarahwood and Golden Gate Park have some similarities, have some differences, but it was interesting just to go and observe and see and feel and just get a sense for each one of those two parks is all about, and I still have yet to get to the other three. So what we want to do is just essentially set up an understanding of what the Parks and Recreation Plan is, and as Jill and Hannah stated, it's required by the Michigan Department of Natural Resources to stay eligible for grant financing, and so that's something that's currently in place, and we'd continue to work with the city on those types of projects. It's a long-range plan that is focused on parks, trails, and green spaces, but connects to other community goals like transportation, housing, and economic development. So again, I think the idea is to think outside the box when we talk about parks and recreation. One of the things that I like to do with my family when we visit a park is to take the bike lane. And so the bike lane as an element of transportation becomes part of the park experience. If that makes sense. So to just think of how all of the different topics that are under discussion for the master plan update relates to one another. Elements of a park and recreation plan include the inventory and analysis, the public input, goals and objectives, action implementation strategy. So very much in line and similar to the master plan process. And it's something that we look forward to working with you to gather and analyze and ultimately make adjustments to, or just confirmation that we're on the right track with the existing plan. But that's the whole purpose and point of going through this exercise with you. The existing conditions, the City of Lathrup Village has 5 municipal parks, over 7 acres of parkland, the obvious being Annie Lathrup Park and Municipal Park in close proximity here. The one that I wasn't as familiar with was Dorothy Warren Park, and I suppose I could have visited that one with the other two, Sarahwood and Golden Gate Park. But much embedded within the community, and I think that those parks offer assets to the residential component of the community, as well as Annie Lathrup and Municipal Park being more of a central focus to the community. The photo on the right is one of the images I took showing the sign there with the QR code to take the survey. And fortunately, I ran into a nanny who was pushing a stroller, a buggy of a child to go play on the swing set. And so I encouraged her to take the survey and just talk to her a little bit about the process and what we were doing. And she seemed interested, but I don't know if she took the survey or not. But it's those types of things and interactions that hopefully you find yourself in and encouraging the public, whether they're a resident or a nanny who's, comes to the city on a daily basis to enjoy the amenities at the parks.
And if you haven't seen the signs yet, that is actually one of them in the picture. So they are up in the parks.
Yep, and we tried to design them in a manner that would be striking. So at first we had a green background, but we thought that would kind of just blend and hide away into the surroundings. So being able to do a site visit myself, I could tell and indicate that the white background had a better, visibility factor and captures the attention. You could tell something's there with the QR code to draw interest into the content of the sign.
I have a very general question. So you mentioned, would you mind flipping back one, Hannah? Thank you. You mentioned Dorothy Warren Park, which my gut tells me most Lathrup Village residents would have no idea what that one is if presented with this list of 5 parks. Probably because it is a mostly empty parcel of land with a sign on it that says Dorothy Warren Park. So my very general question is, what makes something a park, like officially? Because there are other parcels of land in this community that look very similar to Dorothy Warren Park that aren't parks. Does a municipality have to somehow formally designate these parcels as parks?
I believe so, and I don't know if Austin can speak more to that for Lathrop, but contextually speaking, I didn't know about Dorothy Warren Park when I was doing my site visits to Sarahwood and to Golden Gate, but I did know about Sarahwood, and so they're looking at the map. I've never been to Dorothy Warren Park, and so having been to Sarahwood, they look similar in size and orientation. They're triangular in shape. But from what I understand, Sarahwood is more defined in terms of it has signage up in front. It has a large playground and pathways, whereas the Dorothy Warren Park may not have that. But it is designated as a municipal park that's owned by the city, and I don't know if there's more.
I can maybe help a little bit. So you're right that the city does own parcels throughout the city. A lot of those triangular shapes that were kind of leftovers. And I think, at least in terms of the last several recreation plans, you've kind of are at your limit of, at least that's how people I think have thought, in terms of having actual maintained properties that we intend for people to use to recreate. There are spaces that are mowed, but that's really the extent of it. I think that's a determination from council, who would make that call. I think some of those parcels have been thought of as, well, let's hold on to this. Maybe we can use it for parking. Maybe we can use it as a contributing piece for the village center area. And so to not convert those to parks. So you have what you have now, but that would be a determination from council.
Is there any benefit from a grant perspective or otherwise to designating parcels as parks?
I think that the concern, at least the concern in previous plans, has been from the rec committee and from council, is to risk, you don't want to risk overcommitting yourself, overextending the cities to maintaining parks as parks. So you have, it's, do we call it a park? It's a vacant piece of land that the city owns. Is it public? Technically. But do we want to support and encourage that kind of like recreation activity? Do we want to call that as part of our recreation program? And what if we wanted to turn it into something else later? If we have a park, it would be very hard to say we're not going to have this park anymore, because then once you have it a park, people expect that it's going to stay a park. You might not want to turn it into something else. So I think that would be, more of a thinking through process to see if there are parcels that the city wanted to take on as additional recreation space officially.
There's not a question at the end of this, but part of my thinking on the topic relates to ongoing conversations I'm listening to at city council meetings about our tree committee's desire to establish an arboretum in the city, which I actually thought might be the same parcel of land as the Dorothy Warren Park, but as it turns out, it's just another similar one slightly further away than it, or just slightly positioned away from it. So I'm curious if that plan progresses, if there could be some type of, if it would hinder or help that effort to have park designation.
2 points. One, last night City Council approved the Arboretum proposal. So it is a multi-year, multi-decade project. So it is a long-term project. And when thinking about designating more parks, that comes also down to, like Jill said, a City Council budget decision on how much park can we actually maintain with the capacity and funds we have. And another item is that when you're thinking about parks, also think about, and when it comes to being advantageous to get grant funding, Serackwood is on a dirt road, which disqualifies it from most grants because it's not ADA accessible. So that is a hindrance to Serackwood. We cannot get most grant dollars because it is not ADA accessible because it's on a dirt road. So when you're thinking about the parks, also think about what can help them when it comes to funding and also what hinders them. So almost like a SWOT analysis on the parks themselves.
And it's also because Serackwood is disqualified that we can't get grant funding on the majority of our parks. Because the grants from the state and from the federal need to have complete ADA compliance. So we were lucky to get the grants that we were able to for, what was it, municipal park? But it's very tough to get publicly available grants from these organizations because of Serackwood's current condition.
And I would just add in that the city received a grant, now it's probably almost 10 years ago, for Golden Gate Park, for the updates to that, to bring that more into compliance.
Any other questions or feedback? Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And here's just the map of where all the parks currently are. I know it's a little hard to zoom in on some of them, but
So continuing on the exercise that we had with the study session, we're looking back to the 2021 Parks and Recreation Plan and the goals that are established there. The first being take care of existing parks and recreational facilities, kind of a no-brainer. But with my site visit to the 2 parks I had mentioned, it seemed as though there were different levels of maintenance that could occur, particularly related to the playground equipment and to the pathways that are established. They're nice, but they're at a point where it appears as though there could be some additional maintenance there. So in addition to general maintenance, general cleanliness and functionality of the facilities and the grounds, continue to build the volunteer base to help with park maintenance and increase pride in local parks. So this may be where the commissions coordinate with the parks team and working with the DDA. The second goal is to provide a variety of new and improved recreation facilities for public use, and that is to develop neighborhood parks according to the residential preferences and community knowledge, and then to continue to work with adjoining communities to develop a non-motorized multi-use trail loop system. And again, the transportation component of all of this kind of forces you to think outside the box, outside the boundaries of the city, and how it interacts and interrelates with points and destinations beyond. Primary considerations, again, volunteering and staff capacity. So with limited funds, what can we do in terms of implementing a plan for increased volunteerism and interest in capacity to maintain and upkeep what the city currently has for parks. Grant projects may require fund matching. Kind of goes without saying that when you apply for grants, you know, it's assumed that you'd have matching funds to help fulfill the projects that are in need. And as you can see here, this playscape at Golden Gate Park is nice, but it's missing one of its swings. And so what's the process in order to get that swing replaced? New projects will largely be dependent on grant or other outside funding sources. With Parks and Recreation, a lot is leaned on how much funding is available, and that's always the challenge with park improvements and park maintenance.
Yeah, and if I can add to that as well, this was what came out of our conversation at our last meeting with the Recreation Committee. These were some of their major concerns and considerations as we go through this process. So just kind of understanding where they're coming from in terms of their part in this for the fully fledged recreation plan, and then of course in the master plan it'll be more of that highlighted chapter. But that's what their considerations are.
Could you repeat what committee you said? I didn't hear the
Yes,
first
the
part.
Recreation Committee, when we met with them in February,
Okay.
yes.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
so that kind of carried over, and that's what they were talking about.
Yep, and so we want to get a more understanding and a better grasp for how parks are viewed within Lathrup Village. So with the Parks and Recreation Survey, we're asking how and when do people use the parks? When I visited, it was on a weekday, I'm not sure exactly what day, in the morning, and parks were not very active, but like I said, there was a nanny taking a kid to the park, the swing. So I know that there's a lot of participation in terms of organized events and whatnot throughout the year, but we'd like to get a better understanding for how the parks in general are utilized. What could be improved about the parks? I could make that assessment just by visiting the sites. A lot of them appear to be very well established, which is good. Like for example, the benches, this bench in particular that's shown in the image looks to be more new and a recent addition, but just off to the right along the pathway are benches that are in need of repair and kind of falling apart. And so it's recognized that there's probably a phased process for upkeep of this particular park, but what can we do to continue the maintenance where it's needed most? What recreation opportunities should the Recreation Committee explore? And then if there's any interest in volunteering, how does the city capture the bodies that are able and willing to volunteer, whether that's like spring cleanups, volunteer for organizing events throughout the year, and that sort of thing. So.
And so then from here, we're just going to talk a little bit about sustainability and resiliency, but if anybody has any more questions about the Parks and Rec plan, this might be kind of a good time to wrap up that topic.
So to be clear, we're going to move on to a portion of the presentation that is specific to, sustainability and, what was the other word?
Resiliency.
Resilience.
Yeah, and I'll
so if we have
explain.
general commentary, questions, feedback about Parks and Rec at large, now is the better time to do that.
Yes, I
Okay.
think so.
I know you said that. I was repeating it mostly for myself.
No, it's good to repeat. Thank you.
You can always come back.
I have a few general points, but I don't want to dominate. So do any commissioners have any questions or general feedback about Parks and Rec?
I have a clarifying question. Just thank you for like walking through the difference, but I might kind of need that one more time, just in the sense of, is the resiliency and sustainability in relation to parks and recreation, or it's the separate category?
Yeah, thank you for that because so in your previous 2021 master plan, you guys have a chapter on
Just
sustainability
that.
and resiliency. And that particular chapter, and we'll talk a little more about this, but it doesn't have a goal associated with it. It kind of took this approach of weaving it into the other chapters. But Parks and Rec, we've decided to kind of talk about that in the same night because they're interrelated, if you will. But the Parks and Rec plan is its own separate document. It's related to everything in the master plan, so we're kind of moving them forward together. But then you guys will have a little sort of highlight feature, if you will, in the comprehensive plan related to parks and recreation, and those two things could be tied to sustainability and resiliency. So.
Okay.
But it is separate a little bit.
Okay.
Mhm.
So this. Okay. Thank you.
Did that answer your question?
It
Clarify?
did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I did a review of the parks today, this morning. And in general, the problem that we have is that it looks like when the city was developed, the idea was to create as many marketable lots as possible, and then leftover land was allocated to parks. So you have Golden Gate way in one corner. This is not uncommon. I've seen it in other cities too. Leftover land, well, why don't we donate it to the city for a park? Another thing is you have in the packet for today a very elaborate discussion, rather tedious I might say, about safe routes to parks. Well, it's really very applicable to a large city like Detroit where you're developing for a whole region. What might be more appropriate here is where all of those bike route signs are, put on the same post, something about the park that it heads to, and an arrow. But going down park by park, Golden Gate, nice features, one broken swing, no swings for either older or very young children. Just it's common in many of these parks to just kind of target middle elementary children. And the problem, Ogden Nash said, the problem with every kitten is it eventually becomes a cat. Toddlers and elementary school children become teenagers. And if you want a park for a whole community, you really have to design it for all ages. The jogging walking trail has adequate length, but it's very narrow. A lot of times people like to do that together, but the trail is so narrow, the paved trail, that you have to walk one behind the other. And that's not attractive for, hey, why don't we go walk the trail? Secondly, there's no one has bothered to measure it in terms of what fraction of a mile is it? Is it a ninth of a mile? Is it a quarter mile around that trail? And the Golden Gate park that I developed that had a 9-foot wide trail got a lot more use for it when we put up a sign, 9 times around equals 1 mile. That was a really incentive for people to get out and say, I did a mile today, or I did 2 miles, so on. It's a simple thing, one sign on a post, and once around, you know, to take your little roller and see how long it is. The trail is overgrown at points, so you have to go off into the grass. Trees are planted at the perimeter of the park, but no trees offer shade to play features. I saw this in the other parks too. There's no fence at the end of the park that provides access to the I-696 service drive. Some parks, well, people who have children who will bolt for either neurological problems or just sheer behavior energy. you want to, when you take the child to a park, you want to know, is the child going to be protected from running into the street? And how would I stop him if he did? Where do I need to be? Well, if you have a fence with one clear exit and egress, you can deal with that. Serac Wood Park, limited play features, no signage, directions to the park. There's no paved street or sidewalk within hundreds of feet of the park. Trees planted at the perimeter, but not to offer shade to play features. No fencing separating play features from surrounding gravel roads. Dorothy Warren Park. No sidewalks on blocks leading to the park. You have to walk down the middle of the street to get to the park or people's lawns. No play features. No signage in community providing directions. No real adult gathering feature. There's nothing there to gather people. Lathrup Park. Very limited play features for one middle to childhood age range only. Again, no signage indicating that that's where you can take the bike route to the park. No fence separating the play area from Southfield Road. I had the opportunity to interview one young woman who was walking through it, and she addressed some of these same things herself. And she said, you know, I've gone to parks in Novi that are specifically designed for autistic children. We have a grandchild with a different kind of issue. You can't yell at her, stop, don't go there. She doesn't process it. If she sees something that to us is on the other side of Southfield Road, to her it's a bright, shiny object, she'll go charging. And she, believe me, was hard to catch up with several years ago, and now she's 8. So, you know, this is a serious issue. The young woman that I interviewed said she grew up here. There was so little to attract her to any of these parks that she basically grew up on the computer for her leisure time. The handout said that parks in northwest Lathrup Village were in northeast Lathrup Village. I might want to correct that. None of our, okay. In my opinion, all parks should have paved access linked to the city sidewalk system. All parks should have trees planted to provide shade to play areas as a skin cancer prevention measure. All parks should have fences that will assist parents in controlling young or neurologically impaired children who may bolt toward streets. All parks should offer activity features for 5 stages of life: preschool, elementary, pre-adolescence, late adolescence, or teen and adult.
Can I ask you a question about that? What do you think about activities for adults and older adults? Like,
well,
is that a need that you would see is included in that list? Which, thank you for this, by the way.
yes, I think of trails and gardening features.
Like
It would make it
raised
more attractive to walk around Golden Gate Park, for example. A static kind of play feature is just, let's say, a concrete chessboard, that kind of thing. In the parks that we developed, just having benches near play features that were really interesting to a lot of children was a feature to bring adults there to watch the children and to watch their children and then converse with others. You had a reason not, if you see a bench at a park and there's one person sitting there, you're going to go sit down next to him? Well, maybe I'm not welcome, you know. But if there's something else going on and you can sit at the bench, then conversations spontaneously develop. You might, the Arboretum idea, I'd like to know more about that, because parks as a gardening opportunity for like a butterfly garden or that sort of thing. Some people might enjoy that as a group activity as opposed to just in their own backyards. And again, to the walking trail concept, that the park I had reference to, it attracted children with bikes, it attracted grandmas with strollers, it attracted joggers, male joggers in the prime of life, children on bicycles, and young lovers walking hand in hand, and older adults just doing the trail together, talking all the time with each other. And now with a lot of people wanting to walk as an exercise, if it's a pleasant environment and a pleasant trail and wide enough, not at 3 foot wide, but enough for 2 people or more, all those work.
I have some ideas as well in terms of the younger population and then the pre-adolescent and like adults. Having space, once you have like shaded area and having space, that's places where you can set up blankets to be able to eat. I grew up right in front of the Sarahwood Park, so I use that one all the time. And I think a really nice feature that it has was like the tables with the benches, so you could have lunch there, or in the summertime you can. It was nice because that's right next to McIntyre. Lots of kids would live by there, so you can do activities, you can do homework if you wanted to. It's very nice to be able to have tables. The fences were also a really nice feature if they were upkept. I used to get a lot of splinters climbing the fence as a short way instead of going around to the entrance when I was younger with that. But having that space is like that open space to be able to lay things out, being able to stay in the shade. I think now as I'm older and may not want to swing because it gives me headaches now, is being able to sit down and talk with a friend or bring fruits and just like enjoy the landscape, or for people who are younger and have kids who may not want to sit on the bench but have the option to sit in the grass, things like that. I agree with the walking aspect and portion of it, being able to have trails where 2 people can walk together, or it's enough for like double strollers. Some people have lots of kids at one time. Been seeing that more lately, so being able to accommodate bigger strollers, that's helpful. And sometimes moms go together, Facebook groups get people together, so that's usually a good thing. So I agree with Commissioner Nordmo on wider things, and then also the incentive. If we look at like Inglenook Park that's in Southfield, a lot of people, there's like signs that I think also tell you and kind of give you that incentive of how much of it is a mile, and people are constantly walking at that park. So having something like that in Lathrup Village, as well as signage on how to get to the parks, I think is nice. And even just signage saying the name of the parks bold and clearly. I grew up with a lot of these parks, and I only knew the name to half of them. I don't know if that's just user error because I was a child and didn't really care to read the sign. But I think if it was a little bit more bold, and then I know at Sarahwood they have like different options of swings. So when my little sister was first born, she went from that swing to upgrading to this type of swing, and then the set on the other side had the ones for when you're older. I think that model works really well because you can kind of like grow up into it. I'm not really sure about like the teen part, because teens are increasingly inside a lot more now, and I'm not sure what would attract them to go to a park. But I'm thinking in places where we have open areas, it would be nice to, I think it all comes kind of down to marketing for a lot of things, is marketing these open areas as somewhere you can play Frisbee or have like different city events where people do, I don't know, like neon laser tag or something, like you play freeze tag or something. You have space, you can use it. I don't know if kids have that creativity anymore, but if we market that, then they'll be like, wait, that's cool, like let me invite my friend and we can go here and like things like that. And I know like I'm adolescent age, I love to take pictures, you know, Instagram is the name of the game, guys. So if we have like seasonal flowers that are planted at parks and stuff, who doesn't love taking pictures of flowers, with flowers? You get dressed up, you go to the park, you have your little photos, you post it on Instagram, you post it on Facebook, you do your thing. That's also another pull to the park, but sometimes you just have to see someone else do it first, which is all marketing for things like that. So I think also having like that gardening aspect of like cute, aesthetic park, you know, plants, and I don't necessarily think decorations, but just the layout of everything can help with drawing people in and how they utilize the space. Those are just my suggestions I was thinking of as Commissioner Norborn was providing this very extensive and insightful list, so thank you for that.
Any other feedback or questions?
Well,
Commissioner Robinson?
I had a thought. You mentioned how do you attract or activities for more senior, and I'm thinking from toddler to senior, a toddler splash pad. Especially for summer, it's warm, they want to get out, a little splash pad, and make it small enough so it's just for toddlers, because we don't want the teens and we don't necessarily want adults out there, you know, in the splash pad per se. And then bocce ball. I don't know if anyone else here plays bocce, but I like bocce ball.
I've never heard of that before. Let me
They
Google.
have a bocce ball festival in one of the thumb communities every year.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot of fun. So, yeah,
Okay.
those are a couple of ideas that I have. You know, or like shuffleboard.
Yeah, I was thinking something similar
Yeah.
in terms of like interactive,
Yeah.
like games, even if it were like a chess, like outdoor, like chess with the big pieces or something like that. Obviously you have to think about maintenance, like how you maintain keeping the pieces so that people don't go away with them, or different games. I know sometimes they used to have the ones in the play structure where you can do stuff in it, and that's like, will keep your child's attention for a good, I won't speak for other people's kids. It used to keep my attention for a good 25 minutes just doing the different games in the parks like that. So having things that are maybe bigger and like field oriented, like landscape range, would attract like teens, preteens as well, to do interactive things like that. And looking up this bocce ball, that also seems like it would serve a similar purpose. It looks fun. I have to look into it. But things like that, I think, will help be engaging.
In my experience, frankly, because of the poor condition of the playscape at Sararac Park, there has been a lot of discussion and focus on the replacement or updating of kind of high-end, permanently installed equipment like a playscape. What I'm hearing from the commission are several ideas emphasizing temporary, seasonal, removable, and probably lower cost alternatives to improve the usability and popularity of the parks. So kind of an expansion beyond permanent fixtures in the form of seasonal, temporary gaming opportunities, etc. Any other ideas?
couple more.
If I may, because Commissioner Clark brought up McIntyre Elementary School, which is close in proximity to Sararac, which, by the way, I feel like I say wrong every single time, so please forgive my pronunciation of that park. The master plan, as written, makes note of what it calls quasi-public amenities, such as the playgrounds associated with public schools. Well, as I think most of us know, this is the final year for McIntyre to operate in its capacity as a public school. That's the bad news. The good news is the school district intends to repurpose that building as a community center. And so I think we would be missing something big if not to focus on the potential use of this upcoming community center in our discussion about the next 5 years of Parks and Recreation for Lathrup Village. Now, I realize that Southfield Public Schools and Lathrup Village are distinct and separate entities, but certainly as taxpayers to the Southfield School District, I think it is perfectly reasonable to expect partnership and collaboration with this quasi-public facility that is in the works. And how can we think about Parks and Recreation here with some potentially new amenities accessible to us in our backyard? To the best of my knowledge, Lathrop Village does not currently have access to something like a gymnasium for basketball leagues, etc. Well, I'm fairly certain, although the plans have not been revealed yet, that my gut tells me the gymnasium inside that elementary school will maintain its function as a gymnasium. So I think that it's worthwhile being a little imaginative about how Parks and Recreation can benefit from what will be a community center in our backyard. As a final note on that, I know that in the last several years, by way of Councilman Jennings, we have an improved relationship with the Southfield Public Schools, so I think the sooner the better in talking about how our community might be able to best utilize that facility. I think that's timely. Any other thoughts or ideas? Yeah, Commissioner Abraham.
Yeah, Commissioner, you actually just bring up a thought that I've had about how we might encourage more relationships with communities that we have adjoining borders to in terms of their park and rec systems. Like right now, we're considered an outsider to Southfield, so you pay extra for the programming that they do. And maybe we should be thinking a little more broadly with how we might create relationships with some of these bordering communities to utilize some of their facilities. Because we're so small, we can't do everything on our own. And I think that there is some room for negotiation. For example, one of my neighbors who's an animal lover shared that she wanted her to be able to use the newest dog park in Southfield, but was told we really weren't eligible because we're not Southfield residents to use that. And so if there is some enhanced relationship building that we have access to, as you had mentioned, I'd like to see maybe the thought of what access could be broadened so that we have something that we could use in the interim, because if we're talking about a planning process, it's going to take years to develop. So just something else to kind of put on the table as a possibility.
Thank you. Any other thoughts, questions, commentary? Yes.
To piggyback, like a tri-city collaboration would be good. Sort of like what we're doing with libraries. Maybe Southfield, Berkeley, and Lathrop can do the same thing with parks as it pertains to the use of the amenities within Southfield, within Lathrop, within Berkeley. That wouldn't be a bad thing to discuss. just like Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb, the DIA allows people who are in Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb access to that for either a reduced fee or a reduced membership fee, or as that resident, you can, just come in for free. I don't think that's the case, but just looking at those types of partnerships would be good, so.
Yes.
A couple of ideas on low-cost things. I mentioned it briefly, but I think the idea of a bird and butterfly park. State of Tennessee has a major bird park about 10 miles east of Knoxville, and it has a lot of birdhouses and trails. We're trying to make our own backyard into a bird and butterfly park, and it's working. I've got new tenants already this year, and so it's just a little landscaping, a little building, and a theme. It could be very much a community-developed use of one of those triangles down there that looks park-like and has no features to it. Another thing that's very popular now is Frisbee golf, and it doesn't look like it's very expensive. But, I mean, you do have all those fixtures, the little chains on a post, and
Sure.
you know how that works. Two things that worked at one of the parks I was involved with was a tire swing that spins around and swings. And that was the free carnival ride in the park for all ages. One adult told me he had gotten sick of it. And it was very popular with the young kids, 4 at a time on it. I see it in constant use. Older kids like perches. They like to be, we had a climbing and slide structure with a little, house at the top, and the older kids would love to just hang out up there. It's because they were up in the air, and it seemed like a cool thing to do. Also, there are climbing features that you can get that are like big rocks, almost as high as this room, but you can get up, well, not really, but you can get up step by step to the highest part. We had one that was universally accessible. You could slide off your wheelchair onto the lowest part and work your way up. And kids like to be up there having their conversation. It was a cool thing to do. The trails, if they're developed nicely, not full of bumps and cracks, they're great skateboard features. And one of my last experiences in the neighborhood where I was working was a teenager coming up to me with a skateboard to his chest. I've had people walk up to me just to intimidate or something. I thought, what is going on now? What's going to happen? He walked right up to me and said, "I so love your park," and walked away. I never saw it before or since, but he was out there with his girlfriend on that 1/9 mile trail that curved, had nice little curves to it, and it was very smooth, and skateboarding, and there was a lot of that going on in a way that was totally compatible with all those other uses I mentioned. Kaboom was a co-sponsor of one park, and they got a national co-sponsor with us, Oscar Mayer or something like that. And they bought the equipment for the park, and then the build was volunteer. And it was on a city park site. And that's the end of my list.
Any other ideas, questions, comments? My last one, and it ties back to our conversation in the study session is about the specificity of language. Back in the 2020-2021 version of the master plan, there's a focus on the replacement of obsolete equipment. Front of mind comes the play structure at Sarawak Park that gets a lot of bad press, and in my opinion, for good reason. I do think that the master plan could benefit from more specificity in language and the removal of unsafe equipment, which it sounds like beyond the play structure I'm alluding to also includes some park benches at Golden Gate and otherwise. So if we're not intentional enough about the removal of things that are simply unsafe or inaccessible, I think we're doing the master plan a bit of a disservice to be overly rosy about something that isn't very rosy. My final comment, there's been a lot of discussion about kind of seasonal, temporary, low-cost draws to the park, bocce ball courts, large board games, things of that sort. As a bit of a plug, our municipal park is featuring one such thing right now. Our Parks and Recreation Department, in collaboration with the Detroit Institute of Arts, has installed 8 pieces of art around our city, 7 of which are behind us in the municipal park, one of which is across the street in the parking lot where Middle Eats and Rita's are, in addition to other businesses. So I think it's kind of prescient that we're pointing out these things, and I think an emphasis on these types of kind of like seasonal attractions to the parks are important, because each new thing may draw new people to a park they may more routinely utilize if drawn to it for whatever seasonal temporary exhibit might have brought them there in the first place. So that's my last thought.
Question. I know it said that Golden Gate Park was updated in 2012. Do you know about like the time for the other parks when they were last updated?
I don't personally know off the top of my head, but I could get a list going for you guys if you just want kind of like a snapshot of what is the age of all these upgrades. I think that's totally doable, because I believe it is all listed there in the appendix, at least, of the previous plan, but we can provide that to you.
Okay, if it's in the appendix, I'll look for it. I just seen some dates were provided for some parks and then others didn't have that same information, so I was curious about that. And then beyond dates, I know we kind of mentioned this earlier, but it's volunteers that like maintain the parks, or is it like how does park maintenance work?
Yeah, that is. Park maintenance is done by our Department of Public Works. So
Okay.
it's our employees who are going out and actually maintain the parks, and then some of the parks have contracts for grass to be mowed. So.
Okay, thank you.
From a recreation point of view, however, citywide events are put on, as of 2026, entirely by volunteers.
Okay.
As I understand it, at times in Lathrup Village's past, the city has employed Parks and Rec staff to lead that charge, but for at least the last handful of years, recreation activities have been carried on the back of people who volunteer in that capacity.
Okay.
Yeah, currently, right now, staff commits 4 hours Parks and Rec on a weekly basis.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, anything else before we move on? All right, well, that was a lot. I recognize
No,
it
it
as
was all
such.
great.
Hopefully, from the many various and good ideas articulated today, some things will resonate or stick with our friends in Park and Rec, and what we'll synthesize is a good result. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for all of the thoughtful ideas and discussion. It's really what this is all about. I love all the little stories that come out of it, too. So just kind of, this is now going back to the master plan document, which is part of the comprehensive plan. there was a chapter on sustainability and resiliency, especially as we deal with sort of global climate issues. We want to be cognizant of this in all of our planning endeavors. And really, the previous comprehensive plan, it took a unique approach with this topic in that it didn't have a specific goal and objectives attached to it. I think that that would be, up to the Planning Commission whether or not we continue this trajectory and weave it into all of the topics, or if you feel that there needs to be more of a focus here, developing a goal and objectives and action table accordingly. I will say in some of your action implementation tables, these are the tables at the back of the master plan that detail a little bit more, well, what steps do we want to take? There were some zoning action items related to sustainability, namely in public facilities and services. The previous iteration of the Planning Commission committed to reviewing stormwater standards. Are those up to date? Could we potentially encourage more natural stormwater management practices? That typically looks like bioswales, rain gardens, that sort of a thing, as opposed to pipes under the ground, or daylighting water that might have been buried. And then could we look at tree canopy and reducing overall impervious surfaces when we go to approve site plans and amend language to reflect those ideas? And then in your community character section, it did talk a little bit about streetscape standards to improve public rights-of-way, and that's a little bit broad, but I could see how that could tie into planting trees, increasing tree canopy. So that's what you have in your current iteration of the plan, but again, this is open to updating, and if you feel that there needs to be action items or focuses that are not currently in there, we can take a look at that. And you're probably wondering, well, why should we care about resiliency? And aside from just, the environmentalist standpoint, really there's a lot of money involved in the cost of climate events. So just alone per flooding event in the Midwest, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, NOAA for short, reports that each flooding event costs an average of $4.6 billion, and severe storms cost $2.4 billion. So there's really a lot of money and impact that goes into these things. They create increase of city maintenance costs as well as building and insurance costs for property owners. So it behooves all of us to plan for these things now, so that way they don't cost that in the future if we can plan appropriately. And aside from that, climate impacts have been tied to a myriad of health conditions and illnesses on a wide scale, from respiratory conditions to heat illness, waterborne diseases, and so on. And that's documented well from the global scale all the way down to local studies that have been done in the city of Detroit. So these are some of the underlying pressing issues and why we would want to care about that, but you're probably thinking, well, what can we, the Planning Commission, do about all of these global issues? You do have a lot of tools at your disposal in terms of writing language. You can focus on tree cover and tree canopy within the city boundaries, preserving existing green spaces. Again, that stormwater management and impervious surface piece, that's already detailed in one of your action items, but taking a look at that, continuing with that trajectory, supporting biodiversity and plant species. I'll break down what that means a little bit more. For example, you could look at language that limits how many of the same tree species someone could plant on a site. You could look at encouraging native landscapes or something to that effect. And then, of course, standards and incentives for energy alternatives, EV infrastructure. I know that that's already been a conversation in the past year. So those are some of the tools that you have at your disposal to carry with you into the future action items. And that's actually all we have for the presentation, but now if you have questions regarding that sustainability and resiliency, we're happy to answer. If you just have discussion or topics you want to talk about relating to that. And Jill has one more thing.
We can put into our slideshow. But it was one of the things that we talked about with resiliency in 2021 was the idea of personal and community resiliency. So when we have members in our community who are sick or they've got economic distress, that can be a stressor in the community, and how can we support the availability of resources and connectivity, social connections between people. That obviously was a kind of a thing that was top of mind as we were doing the plan through COVID. The idea of how do we bounce back from, we think of sometimes, Hannah was talking about climate-related events, but the pandemic was a major community health shock that took us some time to recover from. But it was kind of top of mind, like how do we reach out to people in the community to let them know, where they can get tested or where they can get any of the resources, like how do you get groceries? Like what do I need to do with my groceries? Am I supposed to wipe them down now, or is it okay to not, I don't have to do that anymore, if you even remember that. And so this is like a bigger idea, right? When we think about sustainability, we're not necessarily just focused on the environment, but we're thinking about, and this is also why it didn't have its own goal in the last plan, is because it is that balance that we have in the community. So we're thinking about community, we're talking about people, we're talking about businesses, our economy, and our environment. So it was part of those things together. And so the idea last time was that sustainability would kind of be woven in through all of the other topics. So I would encourage you to think of it the same way, with how they're all kind of related and how we create that balance, and not have it be something that people think of, well, that's just the environmental stuff, that's just about trees. They're really important, and they're important to us for a number of reasons. But so just kind of adding that extra little highlight from the last plan.
Yeah, thank you. Because I do think that disaster preparedness piece really, or like, it could be climate or it could be a pandemic, but that really centers around your social connections, your emergency responses, and that can really be like a detailed thing if you want to get into it, but mentioning that is definitely worth looking into. Thank you, Jill.
Any questions or discussions about the sustainability and resiliency piece?
Yes. I have a lot of questions. Yes, so, hold on, let me use my big girl voice. Okay, so based on the information that you shared, the statistic that was on the slide previously, how is that relevant to our cute little Lathrup village? I know there's like different terrain throughout the state of Michigan, so it will cause different effects in different areas, but based on what our city looks like, especially having, a highway that goes through it, what's the impact that if you guys have any like data on that, like that we're experiencing right now, and what would that look like as the years go on?
Yeah, I could speak a little bit to that. So two things. I think on a local scale for you guys, it's that community connectedness piece and that emergency preparedness piece, right? Every community sort of needs a plan or an action for that. But also looking at stormwater, right? That's typically contained within a site boundary, and if it's not contained well, it creates flooding. You have flooding in your streets, you have flooding in your ditches. So looking at how your language does or may not support those 500-year storms or 100-year storms that we're I won't say more increasingly seeing, but we're seeing more severe storms. So those kinds of things are more local, but in terms of the health impacts like heat illness, urban heat island effect, and pollution, that is going to be a regional initiative, right? I mean, those things they cross all kinds of city boundaries. Mother Nature doesn't care about our political boundaries, if you will. So I think that could look like for you establishing more connections between levels of government, establishing those partnerships, understanding how Lathrup Village can at least do its part within its boundaries to mitigate some of those effects. Does that answer your question? I know that was a lot.
Yes, to an extent, but I think it'll answer more we get through the rest of my questions. So
the statistics that you shared, do you guys believe that that's relevant considering the the Huron watershed that all of our water contributes to? And I know it goes through talking about our, us being a member of the Friends of the Rouge, I think that's what it's called. Yeah, Friends of the Rouge and other like Alliance of Rouge communities, different things like that. So with all the stormwater things and flooding and like infrastructure-wise, different things that we have discussed previously, like are those relevant to our city's situation?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think that, the quality of water that comes downstream from Lathrup Village is always going to impact those communities that come downstream, right? Like every community from the start of a watershed or its origination point plays a role in how the quality of that water ends up at its end point. So, I think that that's more of a regional conversation necessarily than a hyper focus of the Planning Commission here, but I think being cognizant of those issues and how we are managing flooding and pollution at the local level it's important to be cognizant of that, right, in the language. Yeah.
A little bit more too, particularly with some of the things that the city can do to help mitigate stormwater. We talked about impervious surfaces, thinking about where we might be able to alleviate some of our paved area or mitigate some of our paved areas. Certainly a lot of the business corridor, the Southfield Road corridor, the mile roads, they're pretty much paved over. And they need all the parking. That's that went back to the conversation that we had before about the need for parking in our businesses. But so if we know that, we're sort of bound by that, we're sort of bound by our road network, are there other places that we can look to offset some of that pavement through tree canopy cover? Because trees are really good at helping us mitigate from stormwater, in addition to, helping clean the air and increasing property values and that too. So I think thinking about those things and working with those other, like Hannah was saying, working with those other entities, the other advocacy groups, the other communities that are nearby, the county, on working together to make sure that, whatever we're doing here, the city of Southfield is doing, the village of Beverly Hills, that we're all doing the things that we need to do locally that help support a healthier region environmentally.
And I think if it interests you at all, if you have the time, there are regional climate action plans as well, and if you ever have the time, you can read through them and see how they connect communities. There is one for the city of Detroit, and they have a lot of detailed information in there as well, going from the regional level all the way down to local policy. And I'd be happy to provide a link to that, just so you can kind of see it on a larger scale as well, that it does kind of start with the small communities and move its way up. Yeah, in Oakland County as well.
Okay. SEMCOG.
Yeah.
An item specific to Lathrup Village, I think all of you should keep in mind as you make policy decisions would be that we, for the majority of our city, we don't have a modern stormwater management system. There's cities like New York and Philadelphia where they have departments committed just to where stormwater will go during high rain events. So we rely on our soil and our ground to absorb it. In this part of Michigan, we have high clay in our soil, so it's less permeable. That's why a lot of people's backyards in the summer get flooded. So items that you could look at that would be actionable to help with resiliency would be the lot coverage that can be built on when it comes to commercial or residential. So that would be capping the amount of a lot could be covered with a structure or concrete. So that would keep soil available and ground available to absorb the stormwater, because we rely on, that is our lifeline when it comes to large rain events. And working here for 2 years now, I can see that when we do get large storm events, people's backyards flood. And I know I can name a couple of people right off the top of my head who will have periods long periods of their summer where they cannot use their backyard or a significant part of it because of the stormwater that builds up.
So with that, that's a good segue. I live on Lake Lathrop, and it's actually, you know, I've gotten accustomed to it. I get beautiful ducks every year. The same ducks come back. But just here a couple of years ago, as a part of the infrastructure committee for Lathrop Village, we did address the roads, the ditches, the culverts, and there is curbside drainage that helps to alleviate a lot of the flooding on the, you know, on sidewalks and on the streets. And so that's part of what was addressed at that time. It's more than likely going to have to be addressed again, you know, within the next, what, say 10 years or so.
Yeah.
And as such, that's something that we need to keep in the forefront of our minds and assist to plan for. I'm not going to speak to, or as a former employee for the City of Detroit Water and Sewer Department, I'm not going to speak there, but I will say what, you know, that's what we did for Lathrop, with Lathrop, and to assist Lathrop, so.
I have another question. Which order should I ask this in? Okay, there was a portion that talked about the rising temperature, and I mean, as we see in the world right now, not just in Michigan, but how can we help offset the rising temperature? Because I know that rising temperature can translate into higher cost for residents in terms of AC and basically all utilities. And I know we want to have more trees, which I'm all for more trees, love trees, but trees can come with a lot of issues that a lot of people don't want, especially talking to neighbors. I hate seeing trees get cut down, but people cut them down because they don't want property damage, or it brings in, the nicer you make a neighborhood naturally, the more inviting it is to nature. And sometimes people don't like that as well. There's lots of, you know, there's upsides, there's downsides. So are there any other, so I guess my first question is how to help offset that rising temperature in a way that's sustainable for Lathrup Village, and then how we would translate that into language. I know that's a big question. And then the second part is if you have any like knowledge and experience with, if you did this in a different city, what solutions would look like beyond trees.
Yeah, did you want to answer to that?
So
Commissioner Robinson?
one of the things that you can do to reduce the carbon footprint is to reduce the neurofluorocarbons, meaning aerosols, sprays, those types of things that release the mists and chemicals into the environment that helps to tear away the ozone layer, which increases the heat to the Earth's atmosphere and creates the shift and the change in the weather patterns that you see on a global scale year after year. If you notice, well, you might be too young, but weather started on the West Coast and came around as the Earth rotates to the East Coast, and you could almost gauge when your tornadic activity was going to be, when your oceanic activity was going to be. Now, because of the shift and the change in climate, we're getting weather like, you know, is it going to snow in May? Is it going to snow in June? You're getting a lot of changes and regional changes. It's snowing in Texas, but it's hot in Michigan. You know, those are the types of changes that we're looking at, and those are the things that we can do. If we reduce our carbon footprint, that will help. The trees are necessary. They release the oxygen we require in order to breathe and to help clean the environment and to clean the atmosphere. So I understand what you're saying about, you know, the overhang and making sure that people's roofs and whatnot don't get destroyed, but prune back the branches. You know, that's one of the things, keep the trees, but just prune back the branches, and that, I'm not your organization, but go ahead, I'm sorry.
I think that's really valuable insight in terms of the benefits of trees, and it's, you know, much heard that there are pros and cons to tree, especially as it relates to nature, but also to keep in mind, you know, not only the purification of the air, but also the absorption of water as we talk about storm and drainage issues. And so I know that has been part of the discussion, more specifically related to the transportation topic of the master plan update, where a focus could be put on how to plant street trees along Southfield Road, for example, and using that as a beautification element. But not only that, but a practical element as it relates to this topic on sustainability. The trees could potentially be planted in the right-of-way, and so therefore, you know, there's oversight from an entity that has oversight into that right-of-way and not necessarily burdened on property owners. But to just think about it in that sense too, that, you know, those two components of the master plan can come together under one initiative. So the sustainability element, how does that relate to the transportation element along Southfield Road, and the beautification and just the practical nature of trees, for example.
And if I may just add, trees are natural catch basins. You don't have to dig a catch basin. You plant a tree, it's going to absorb and suck up the water that's in that space as the tree is growing and as the tree matures. And that, you know, the foresting of the trees is part of why we are sort of in this climate conundrum as it stands. So.
And I understand that, but I'd want to focus on issues like solutions that aren't away from trees, just because it comes with so much cons. I mean, it comes with a lot of pros. Like I said, I'm very pro-tree, but I'm also aware of like the ants live in trees. Allergies come with trees. Roots of trees, like we would want to realistically put them by the roads, but then that would cause more road problems in terms of just it falling, tree stuff falling during storms, as well as the roots uplifting sidewalks and the road. So infrastructure-wise, different things. But I agree with the points that were made, but I'd want to think about other solutions that we could implement and how we could weave that into the overall section that we have currently. Like based on reading the 2021 plan, I think it right now, like you guys mentioned before, it's kind of just like stating the situation, which I think is important. But I think having language to take initiative to build like the bonds that we said before, as well as providing some types of options beyond just trees, would also be helpful, so that when ordinances are being made, decisions are being made, purchases happen, that those things can be considered if there is pushback on the trees. Like I just have to think devil's advocate wise, because I think probably most of us here would agree on the trees. But I know there's going to be people who come in anti-tree. And so just being able to be prepared for that and solutions that would fit the needs of Lathrup Village while also giving a diversified range of options.
I can add to that as well, because you mentioned what are things other than trees. I think that the site design and layout is just as important as the presence of trees. So where those trees are on the site actually matters a lot. Now, there's a lot of smaller sites in Lathrup Village, so someone might not be presented with a lot of options as to where they can place the trees. But for example, like trees are a lot more effective on the south side of a site because, you know, we're in the northern hemisphere, so all that sunlight, that shade goes further when they're planted on that side. Also breaking up large expanses of pavement. When there's a lot of pavement in an area, you know, if you're standing in like a large parking lot, you can feel the heat coming off of it. So having a reprieve built into language, if you will, like language about islands or trees where they're placed in a parking lot, for example. Again, I know that the sites are a little bit smaller in Lathrup Village, but that's something that I would think back to look at, not just requiring more trees, but dictating a little bit closer where they are so they're more effective, as well as creating that reprieve from impervious surface that does generate quite a lot of heat, in addition to building materials and colors, and you could get into energy efficiency as well. The ozone is a part of that, so if that just generates a little bit more thoughts, I wanted to add that, so.
Thank you, that did, and that was really helpful, so I appreciate that. And I know that was very long-winded, everyone. For context, I am an environmental science minor, so this just got my brain going in a lot of different ways, and hearing the different perspectives in different cities as well. Went to school in Ann Arbor, and so a lot of like urban planning and different initiatives in there, but they also have a lot of different terrain and space than Lathrup Village has. So just trying to keep that in mind, space-wise, and then terrain. And I think it was helpful knowing that, you know, we're mostly clay, and that's our absorption is our stormwater system at the moment.
I was just curious, do you have any suggestions or thoughts based on your studies and that sort of thing as to like what some possibilities could be for Lathrup Village?
I think, yes, there's 853. Okay, so
I mean,
this
like,
is where I get really nerdy, and I'm like, yes, there's a lot of new options out there in terms of different groups that have been trying different things. My only thing is like adapting it to the space that we have, like being like 1.5 square mile, and then some cities are more like location, terrain, like all of those things play such a big factor into like drainage and tree location, like we were saying, and different technologies that have been developed that can be implemented. So I think maybe just taking time to assess what we look like, and then what projects that have been done, I would say even just locally in the state of Michigan and then Midwest. There's other states that have similar like terrain and issues as Lathrup Village, especially being a smaller city, that we can, I think, draw from there in terms of solutions so that we know what language to use as we're developing the plan. I know we're kind of like in our last phase of everything, so it would kind of be like a quick turnover, but I think looking into that information, because they have some really cool new technology that's like low cost but still pretty effective solution-wise, that I think could be helpful. I'll dig back into my stuff before all my U of M stuff disappears into the ether, but I'll see if I can bring some stuff.
That'd be great.
We absolutely have time still, by the way. Like, absolutely. This is the next part, and if you have ideas to share, please send them.
Will do.
One of the things that I think of, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was gonna, this will be my last two-part.
Yeah.
One question is whether or not City of Lathrup Village has an ordinance against rain barrels collection.
No, we don't. In fact,
And-
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, and that is one way in which to manage stormwater drainage or runoff. And this is something that has residents within the city of Detroit have done. Disconnect the downspout, collect the water in a rain barrel, take that rain barrel, put a spigot on it. You got your water, your flower garden, use that water, and you're conserving water and reducing your bill, and you're helping the environment.
I was
All
just
while
going to say,
diverting the water from your home.
All while diverting the water from your home. And then that runoff is not coming down your driveway. It's going right into your flower bed, or you're watering your grass, or whatever the case.
I was going to say, you know, one of the things that this body did in 2022 after adoption of this comprehensive plan in 2021
was we did consider and we did propose some impervious surface and lot coverage standards that Jill alluded to earlier. Ultimately, it wasn't adopted by City Council, but I think it's something that's worthwhile probably looking into again. You know, as part of that too, you know, I know trees is one option, but you know, the tree committee right now is currently discussing or desires to have, and they're proposing some suggestions for a tree ordinance. I think this is a great opportunity to look at, again, some things that Hannah brought up about site planning, preparation, implementation, specific species that are more adaptable to, you know, soaking up more water, rain gardens, things of that nature, and incorporate that into, because if you look at, I know it's not the zoning code, so you might not look at it, but the general code, our vegetation section is pretty lackluster, and it hasn't been addressed in many, many years. So it's ripe for review, and I think, I can't speak for City Council, but I think they would appreciate the input from this body, and again, a lot of the legwork in coming up with some language and providing some solutions to these problems, because stormwater is not a new problem to the city of Lathrup Village. It's been a problem as long as I've been here. When I first started, the big problem was infiltration of stormwater into our sanitary system. And that was, if longtime residents remember, the Extend Your Downspouts campaign, to kind of contradictory to the rain barrels, but maybe the rain barrels would have been a better approach back then. But yeah, those are all things that I think that, you know, leaving this in this version of the plan, I think is important, and then taking that next step and you know, creating and proposing language. Different council now than it was in 2022, so they may be more receptive to some of these ideas this time around.
Attorney Baker mentioned again the tree committee, which has come up a few times this evening, and I have a final thought, unless somebody wants to offer any other question or commentary on this topic.
I'd just like to see a more aggressive program for developing the streets that were kind of laid out to be boulevards and then settled on a 2-lane and acres and acres of berm. Lathrup Boulevard is like that, and there are some other short boulevards cutting through the neighborhood. And right now it's just grass. And I would think that I would like to see some wave of development that inspires a lot of community participation to develop block by block and street by street, more use of those wide berms. I have a 32-foot berm in front of my house. Can you imagine? The same on the other side of the street, because apparently this was supposed to be a boulevard, and it's just mowing surface for most people. And this is an opportunity to make Lathrup Village just verdant with all kinds of, maybe not big trees, maybe the shorter flowering trees and rain gardens and just all kinds of evergreens and so on, and make it a great place to drive through. Some cities, they have, Knoxville has a Dogwood Festival every year, and they have trails marked out to drive just to see all the dogwoods in bloom. We could have something fantastic like that that takes advantage of the space, the tremendous abundant space we have, and those triangles, maybe they can be places where they're public nurseries for more of the trees that we need in the community.
Thank you for that. And I remember we discussed these berms before in discussion about neighborhoods in an earlier discussion on this topic of master plan. So I think it speaks to the interconnectedness of these topics and how one will inevitably and eventually lead back to the other. And I'm glad that we've conducted these conversations in this way to make these connections back and forth. As my final thought on the extension of the thought I was making earlier about Attorney Baker's mention of the tree committee. With limited budget, lack of dedicated paid staff, I'm consistently proud of and excited by our Parks and Rec committee. In part because of the programming they put on in and of themselves, like Breakfast with the Bunny and Easter egg hunt events, or Food Truck Friday, which happen all through the summer, including this coming Friday. But especially in their partnership with inter and intra-city organizations. And so, in short order, just based on memory, in recent history, our Parks and Rec committee has worked with our nature club to put on a hydrangea workshop. These are highly knowledgeable neighbors of ours that volunteer their time to teach the rest of us about plants in our gardens that we may not know much about. I really, really encourage people here and watching to attend those events. They're really worthwhile. And again, they're partnerships between Parks and Rec and our nature club. Another recent event was an Arbor Day event put on at the municipal park behind us where we planted a tree. And by we, I mean those of us in attendance, like myself, but also our Parks and Rec committee, our nature club again, and our tree committee. Next week, our Parks and Rec department will work in conjunction with our Lathrup Village Women's Club to take a group of seniors to the Detroit Zoo. Again, in June 12th, just like they did last weekend, our Parks and Rec committee will work in conjunction with a docent from the DIA to tour residents of Lathrup Village free of charge around the 8 pieces of artwork displayed in the municipal campus. That docent happens to be Lathrup Village resident, communications committee member Chuck Snelling, whose breadth and depth of knowledge about the pieces of artwork around this community will really, really impress you. So I'm bringing this up for a few reasons. One, to put a plug in for a few of their upcoming events, but also to express my appreciation for their hard work despite their limited budget and lack of paid staff to help them. But also to recognize the groups like the Nature Club, the Women's Club, and the Tree Committee that are so often working in conjunction with them. So I'm also bringing this up to encourage you, meaning Giffords Webster, to, if there is another session with the Parks and Recreation Committee, to consider extending invitations to those ancillary groups like the Tree Committee, Women's Club, Nature Group, etc., because they are so often working hand in hand with our Parks and Recreation Committee to put these events on. So that's my final thought on the matter. But I would, unless you have, there's no more presentation left, right?
Nope,
No?
that's
Okay.
everything.
Well, thank you to Eric and Hannah and Jill for your support in this presentation this evening. We really appreciate it per usual, and thank you again for your time.
Thank you. And if you have not taken the Parks and Rec survey, please, or any of the surveys, we still encourage everybody to tell their neighbors, their friends, everyone. They're still open until the end of the month.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm just going to emphasize that. And challenge everybody here to send the link to 10 people you know and personally ask them, as a planning commissioner, we're working on this project and we want your input. And that, I guarantee, we will see those numbers skyrocket.
We have the business cards too, if
Yeah.
you need something mobile to
Either
hand out
way.
to people. Yeah.
Either 10 emails or a combination of emails and business cards.
Yeah, before all of you leave, I'll go get more business cards for each of you, and give 10 of them to give out to one of your neighbors. And anybody else wants one, a pack of 10. So
Put a
please,
sign in your front yard.
So please get the word out, keep it going. We appreciate you guys for the work.
Thank you. Thanks again. All right. Next agenda item, number 8, general communication. I'll throw it along to Austin for a site development update report, please.
No problem. So we do have a new business moving in. The building located at 17600 11 Mile was recently purchased by a chiropractor who has an office in Beverly Hills. He's been located there for 10 years, and he's looking for his own building to operate his own business out of. So lucky enough, we got him here in Lathrup Village. His name is Ray Hillebrand, great guy. He's gonna be a great addition to our DDA as well as to the community. He will also have a second tenant that will remain in that building, which is Valley Bryant's Always Here For You. So he is currently in the process of going through engineering review because the most recent use of that facility, of that space, was an accounting firm, which is the same use classification, so there's no higher intensity for parking, so we were able to administratively approve the site plan. So we're waiting for feedback on his site plan and award him his permits. But on May 30th, he's gonna do a grand opening to let everyone know that he's coming to Lathrup Village. And so all of you, please, if you're available on Saturday, May 30th, from noon to 4, we'll be doing a ribbon cutting at 2 o'clock. So please come on by. We actually just got their, I've been working with them for a couple of weeks on the event itself, but we got their event application today because they're looking to close off the parking lot, and we got some parking with MEA. Lucky enough, they're willing to partner and let them use their parking lot that day. Is just a 400-foot walk down the street. So please come on out if you guys are available at 2 o'clock. Across the street, 27411 Southfield Road. Jaybird, we're waiting on revised plans for the canopy that you guys approved, or that what he was approved for. At 27651 Southfield Road, Middle Eats, they are expanding into the south suite. They are under construction now, and their project is moving along. They actually, if you notice, they moved the sign, the Middle East sign. It's now centered between the two units. That it was just completed recently. At 27700 Southfield Road, they are waiting to hear back from Mishta. We keep getting good news from them that they're moving along. They're at the final step. So the end of June? End of June, hopefully they have an answer. Unfortunately, we've been hearing that since October. Yes.
I'm sorry, you said the address, but we're talking about the
school.
Lathrop school
Yep,
site.
the school.
Okay.
Yep, the developer's waiting on to find out the final decision on Mishta's decision to give them their gap financing. So we should know within the next couple months how that project will proceed. And then at 28919 Southfield Road, you guys approved site plan for a cafe. They have submitted their plans, they're under review, and we're working with our building consultant to get them their permits. So hopefully soon they will have that. And we also had Scott was there and Eric was there. We had a great meeting with the property owner who is very interested in helping expand that site, and we had a great conversation about parking in the city. So as we keep looking into our parking ordinance and ways that we can update it, advance it, that was a great conversation to get feedback from that property owner. And with the recast project, we're going to be talking more with property owners, so it's only going to provide more feedback that we can provide to you. And I did ask the property owner when they're available to come and speak to you all, to hear from them exactly the challenges they're facing with our parking ordinance. And that's going to be something we try to advocate, like Ray, if he's a new property owner, I invited him to come and speak to you all. And with the recast project, when we're engaging with property owners, especially on 12 Mile, when we're looking to do rezoning, we want to make sure the property owners are coming and talking to all of you and giving you information directly from them. I mean, we can tell it to you and relay it to you, but it really carries a lot of weight and really gets across when they bring the information to you and provide you the opportunity to provide questions to them and give responses in real time. So that's all I got this month. I just want to thank you all. I think at the beginning of this process, there was a lot of unknowns. You're all relatively new to the Planning Commission. 3 of you, well, Royce, you just got here, but you're doing great. 3 of you were here in the last 12 months, and then 2 of you at least the last couple of years. So, and this is the first master plan update you guys have been involved in, and I've seen a lot of growth in you as a team during this process. So please keep it going. don't stop, and keep working with Giffords. I think you guys are on a good track, and we're gonna have a good product at the end of this process.
Thank you, Austin. And you yourself have been very instrumental to helping shepherd us along this process. So don't forget to name yourself in
Thank
the
you.
acknowledgement as well.
Appreciate it.
And
Thank you.
what's his last name?
He's got one more.
What is?
He's got one more, yeah. Thank you. Any other questions or commentary on the site development updates? Mr. Colson,
Yes.
you'll be with us next month as well, right?
I will be here with you next month. Yes. I'm not yet.
All right,
Get
all
rid of
right.
me.
I'll
be back
bite my
next
tongue.
month.
Without any questions or comments from the dais, we'll move along to agenda item 9, public comment. Again, please state your name at the podium, and you'll have 3 minutes to offer public comment. Sure.
I had pages of notes from the conversation.
Thank you.
And decided to ad-lib because there was too many. John Suzanis, again, Lathrup Village resident, Rainbow Drive. Actually nestled nicely between Dorothy Warren Park and the... You're going to tell me to speak up? I will. That was the quietest meeting I've ever attended. And I know it's a function of the air conditioning, but it was hard. No, I want to say I want to speak on behalf of the Triangles, but I felt like as the meeting progressed, I didn't need to as much because it's interesting. The conversation started with what I thought was almost Tim potentially saying, you know what, we don't need to talk about this because we have no jurisdiction here. I know you weren't really saying that, but you were kind of at least hinting at that as a possible interpretation. And yet it led, as you guys spoke, to one of the more, if not most thoughtful and insightful conversations that we've had in this master plan process so far. So I really commend you on that. There were a million great ideas that surfaced from that. And one of the ideas that started to sort of, if you put the pieces together, was that the triangles, the parks, et cetera, are, and I love, connecting them with the bike path, but either way, they're a network of potentially different things with different identities. A great example is this emerging arboretum, which is on an otherwise unremarkable triangle of land. The city pays to cut the grass, and that's about it. And they've come up with a self-funded model for the most part, or grant and self-funded volunteer way to transform this thing into what looks like will be a destination place, an educational place. It won't be a playground. It'll be something else, right? Not every park has to be a playground. The idea for bocce, well, you could take Dorothy Warren, which, by the way, has a beautiful sign. The garden there is maintained voluntarily by a neighbor, and it has a picnic table. But if it had a couple bocce, courts, et cetera, or maybe there's another triangle. So I would just caution the community and this body, to the extent they have jurisdiction, in my own body, to value those triangles, because while I agreed with a lot of the things that Giffords presented today, one thing I don't agree with is that it's hard to turn a park into something else. I think that's much easier for a government to do than to turn something else back into a park. So once you let go of the triangle over there on the northeast, it will never come back to the city as potential green space. So I would, listening to your guys' conversations, so many ideas. Parks open up our imagination. They open up our thoughts about community, et cetera. So I just really hope you value them and continue with this work. I do have to say one more thing, even though I'm going over, which is I envisioned a public role in this type of conversation in this process, and I still don't feel like we've got that.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Bruce Ganner, just a few quick comments. You were talking about the various age groups for parks and in terms of amenities for those people. One thing that was never mentioned was things like exercise stations, which has been very successful in a lot of other parks. 10 Mile in Oak Park, they have regimented exercise stations, so it's something to consider. It was also talked about the fact that we can't get grants for Siracoit because of the dirt roads. One of the things that we did do this year is submit as part of our congressional budget requests for a revamping of the park, which would include paving those roads around the perimeter. So hopefully we'll hear something on that sometime soon. A lot of talk about the Arboretum. I would include that because we officially adopted that last night. So that should be on essentially our park inventory.
And we did visit with the tree committee as well.
Yeah.
A couple months ago.
For all those of you having trouble pronouncing Siracoit, it's named for the 3 roads that surround it: Saratoga, Rackham, and Woodward Way. So Siracoit. As far as resiliency and sustainability, I'm glad you brought that up, Scott, because I had that on my list. We did, when I was on Planning Commission a while back, we did push a ordinance for impervious surfaces. Unfortunately, council voted it down. It's a different council now, so I would strongly encourage you to take a look at that old ordinance, see if it needs any updates, and bring it back to council for consideration. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, seeing none, I will close public comments and we'll move along to number 10, commissioner comments. Any comments from the dais? My only comments would be to some of the public comments. If we could put a little bit of research into the height restrictions for buildings along Southfield Road, that might be a worthwhile potential change to the ordinances to discuss.
Currently, it's 2 foot or two foot. It's a late. 2 stories in the CEV, 3 stories in the MX, 5 stories in the Village Center.
Oh, okay. So perhaps the ordinances at the time were different and limited
Yeah,
them
those
to
were. The city went through major ordinance renovations, 2011, 2012.
Thank you. And to Mayor Cantor's comment, I agree that it's worthwhile to revisit those impervious versus pervious surface discussions, because perhaps there is some there that this new council might be receptive to. So, anything else?
No comment.
All right. Well, it was another doozy, but I will take a motion to adjourn, please.
Motion. Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Enjoy your evening. Thank you, everybody. We're adjourned.
Thank you.